So I want to thank you all for coming here today. At every meeting I speak at that is a gathering of trade unionists, I will always make the point of the importance, the crucial importance of solidarity from the trade union movement. Having affiliations and support from trade unions representing millions of British workers is a crucial part for the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign of our strategy to build a mass movement to campaign for Palestinian rights here in the UK. But today at this conference, I am also adding this message that you have heard consistently from every single one of our Palestinian partners, and I do not apologise for repeating it, and the fact is we need more, much more, in meaningful solidarity from the trade union movement at every level of the trade union movement, as today has been an attempt following the motion asked at the TUC, an important motion. Today has been about mapping out what that more needs to look like. Now, this is a week when we have been reminded again, if we needed any reminders, the darkness of the moment being experienced by the Palestinian people. After 1 year of genocide, a genocide which is not abating, but which, if indeed it is possible, Israel is increasing in levels of barbarity. This week brought new and more visceral scenes of horror, with the images of 19-year-old Jamal burning to death while still attached to his IV drip. And of course, still granted impunity by Western governments, we are now seeing, as we have warned about for months, Israel extending its carnage now to Lebanon, where it is carpet bombing, killing thousands of civilians, attacking UN bases, and promising the world the prospect of a potential major war with Iran, which could threaten world peace. None of this, as you know, has shaken the conscience or ended the complicity of our leaders, with Keir Starmer choosing this week, challenged again in the Commons, this time by Zara Sultana, to stop arming Israel. Says he will never stop arming Israel, because you see, Israel has a right to defend itself. And this week, David Lammy thinking this is the moment to announce new sanctions on Iran. So Keir Starmer and David Lammy, as you know, are still trying to convince us of a narrative that depends for any coherence on the lie that history began on October the 7th, that everything that has unfolded since then is a response by Israel, defence to an unprovoked attack, and that the only framework, therefore, for legitimate discourse and debate, and some of you would have seen this played out in question time this week, the only framework is the nature of Israel's defence acceptable? Which is why we end up, as we did on question time, in grotesque conversations about whether burning people alive, shooting children deliberately in the head and the chest, as verified by doctors in the past few weeks, starving people, whether all of these constitute proportionality. And of course, if a state has a right to defend itself, then it is acceptable to set up weapons. But of course, the reality that we all know is that history did not begin on October the 7th. The reality is that since 1948, Israel has employed an unbroken chain of brutal violence in order to dispossess an indigenous people, colonize their land, ethnically cleanse those it is able to, subject those who it does not ethnically cleanse or kill to a life of subjugation under a system of apartheid. The horrific burning alive of Shaban al-Dalou is the raw, naked, barbaric face of that system of oppression that on a daily basis, on October the 6th, and on October the 5th, and on October the 4th, and on every day before that, stretching back to 1948, has sought to strip an entire people of their dignity, to humiliate them, imprison them, demolish their homes, separate them from their land and from each other, and periodically slaughter them. What we see now is the reality that unfolds if you grant impunity to those enacting such violence. So this will not change without two things. One, we know, is the need for the ongoing resistance of the Palestinian people. That is a given. The second is pressure from a global solidarity movement that responds meaningfully to the call for BDS, that works to achieve the isolation of Israel diplomatically, politically, militarily, economically, and culturally. Only in that way will Israeli citizens be forced to address the consequences of the crimes enacted by every government they have elected since 1948. Because we need to understand this fundamental truth as well. There is no significant body of opposition to Israel's system of oppression within Israeli society. The escalation of the war, of the genocide, in the past few weeks, the bombardment of Lebanon have made Netanyahu more popular. The burning alive of Sharon al-Dalou has not led and will not lead to protests across Israel demanding an end to this barbarity. What we have seen instead this week is videos of Israelis in bars in Tel Aviv chanting again the song that is widely shared across Israeli social media and openly sung at football matches. May your villages burn. When you burn Palestinian villages, as Israeli settlers regularly do, then people burn alive, as Jamal al-Dalou did this week. So we know this truth. Change within Israel will only come when it is forced by Israel's isolation. The solidarity, therefore, that Palestinians demand of us, as Ryan reminded us at the start of the day, as Omar, for those of you in the workshop I've just attended, reminded the people there, the solidarity Palestinians demand is not an act of charity, it is simply this, a commitment that we do no harm. And meeting that commitment calls on us simply to end the complicity of our government, public bodies, companies and corporations without whose support Israel cannot sustain this system of oppression. And that precisely is where we need more from the trade union movement, and the roadmap of what is required is outlined in that motion passed at the TUC and has provided the framework for this conference today. That motion notes the call from Palestinian trade unionists, reaffirmed in May this year. You've heard it referenced right at the start of the day. That call makes it explicit the need for trade unions in this country to build BDS campaigns and to make their unions entirely apartheid-free zones. That requires every trade union to look at how its members might be made complicit through the UK's ongoing trade with Israel, through investment by public bodies or corporations that they work in, like Barclays Bank, through their members having to process or handle weapons that are destined for Israel, through their members having to process licenses for the sale of weapons to Israel. Every act needs to be examined so that unions are seeing what they can do to place pressure on their employers to end the complicity. And now we have succeeded in defeating the government's pernicious anti-boycott bill, which aimed to stop public bodies, just from divesting from complicit companies, then we are ramping up all of our divestment campaigns. Those aimed at local authorities through their pension funds and those aimed at universities. And as you would have heard if you attended the divestment workshop earlier today, these campaigns are starting to yield victories. With Walton Forest local government pension scheme, with King's College, both announcing divestment, and more recently Islington Council cutting its contract with Barclays Bank. And as you heard if you were at the anti-normalisation workshop, we also need unionists to resist every pressure from government, from pro-Israel voices outside and inside their unions who seek to silence Palestinian voices and intimidate those who want to be active in solidarity with the Palestinian people. We know, I know because I get sent the letters, that the Board of Deputies writes regularly to General Secretaries telling them not to support PSC, not to attend our marches, not to affiliate to our campaign. And we also know, and we've addressed it in the workshop I've just attended, the pressure trade unions are under to work in alliance with groups, especially Israeli groups, which wish to shift the framing by suggesting that the problem that needs to be solved is not a problem of how do we dismantle structures of racist suppression, but rather how do we deal with mutual hatred by building forums of coexistence. And I'm talking specifically about groups like Standing Together. So we need trade unions to be bold in asserting their understanding of the nature of the oppression that Palestinians are subject to, knowing that by doing so, they are rooting their solidarity in a consistent anti-racism. Now, Omar Barghouti, when he spoke at our Fringe meeting at the TUC, some of you were there, he reiterated in the workshop I just attended, he acknowledged that some of us, some of you, may be suffering from what he called genocide fatigue. But he cautioned us. He said this: we do not have the luxury of succumbing to genocide fatigue because our Palestinian brothers and sisters do not have that luxury. So what we need is to escalate all of our actions. So I hope to see you all in Trafalgar Square in the next couple of hours. I hope to see you back on the streets with us on November the 2nd, when on the anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, we will march from the Foreign Office to the US Embassy. But I want you to take the actions that we have discussed today back into your workplaces. I want you to go back to your branches, and if you're not affiliated to the PSC, become affiliated. I want you to go back to your branches and take the divestment motions and pass them and look at how your union can get involved in those divestment campaigns. I want you to go back and pass the motion in relation to the Workplace Day of Action and join the next Workplace Day of Action on November the 28th. Our Palestinian brothers and sisters will never give up their struggle for liberation. Israel can kill them, it can assassinate them, but it cannot kill the spirit of resistance, because that spirit is founded on the fundamental principle that it is better to die on one's feet than live a life of subjugation. Our path through all the mechanisms we've outlined is to stand with them in meaningful solidarity until the day arrives when the walls of apartheid are finally torn down, when all of the Palestinian people living in exile are able to return to their homeland, a day on which the sun will finally rise over a free Haifa, over a free Jerusalem, and over a free Gaza. Thank you.